Hello and welcome. It's Game Source Podcast number 138. It's going to be sort of a special edition as we're recording this on hopefully what will be multiple occasions. My name is Gerald, better known as Yes, Elvis Lives, and I'm here today with the man, the myth, the legend himself, the director of it has to be one of the best films, most highly rated films of this year. It's a documentary, Nintendo Quest, which you can see not only on Vimeo with bonus.
Sorry, my dog is going nuts. I apologize
Does
there.
your dog disagree with the critiques for Nintendo Quest?
I don't know what he's up to. Something's afoot. I can tell you that much.
I was going to say, because that helps feed his, gets him food, is Nintendo Quest. So.
Good old George he's anxious to jump in on the discussion and debate about Star Wars. I think that's what's going on with him.
Okay, fair enough. It's Nintendo Quest, which you can get on Vimeo with bonus features. Plus, you can also get it on iTunes and buy the DVD on Amazon.com as well. His name is Rob McCallum, and it's a great pleasure to have you on the show again, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm a little under the weather, so I do apologize if I don't sound 100% and if I occasionally may have to blow my nose. But I'm here for the challenge, for the sake of representing thoughts and opinions on Star Wars, The Force Awakens.
Fair enough. And I know our good friend Jay, your best friend Jay, my good friend as well, the master of everything on the podcast called Galaxy Far, Far Away, has been very opinionated as far as his thoughts on the movie itself. And quite frankly, we're going to have discussion today on Star Wars: The Force Awakens and also as well our Game of the Year thoughts. So if you don't want to hear either, there's going to be lots of spoilers. So this is just a preface on all the occasions this week. We're going to be talking Star Wars and Game of the Year stuff. So if you don't want to, anything to persuade you on that, might want to hit the shut off button right now. But
so we're going full on. Is that what you're saying? Full on? We're going 100% spoilers.
100% spoilers. I think if you're going to go in, you're going to go in all the way. I mean, there's already spoiler casts out there. There's already numerous articles that have spoilers.
Sure.
So I think it is about time that we discuss it. It's just it's one of the largest domestic opening here in the United States as far as concerned. Yes, for now. And one of the largest openings of all time, number 2, I believe, behind Jurassic World, with over 500 million. So it definitely warrants a great bit of discussion indeed. But before I want to get into that, I also want to talk your GamerCast and how people can get a hold of that as far as Podomatic is concerned. Your great show, which you dedicate to everything gaming. And also how they can become a Patreon subscriber and be able to get the great things that are even more available to them on GamerCast. With you, Jay, and Glenn, who are great guys.
The easiest way, honestly, is just go to patreon.com/GamerCast. Patreon is obviously a subscription-based site, but for only $1 a month, you get a 20-minute extra-long episode, usually on average per week. We're now doing 5 episodes a month, thanks to milestones that we hit on Patreon. There is a free version that you can search on iTunes. There are links available on NintendoQuest.com. We do have a Facebook page, facebook.com/GamerCastNation. We are all over the place. NintendoQuest.com is really the kind of major hub, and you will find links to it there. But really, do yourself a favor, spend $1 a month, patreon.com/GamerCast. And we just recorded our New Year's Eve episode last night. And there's going to be an exclusive episode just for Patreon listeners where we talk about what the future of Nintendo Quest is and get very specific with sequel ideas. So it's now is the time to plunk down $1 and be part of the in crowd.
Fair enough. And I know I've been persuaded by the dark side to do that for quite some time. I want next time I see you, I have a I don't have a $12 bill, but I have a $20 bill that I've been waiting to give you. I wanted to do it in face-to-face because I love photo ops and I love to post ads on Facebook after that. But I might have to just go ahead and just go do it over the good old-fashioned credit card plastic type deal because I do want to hear what the future lies for Nintendo Quest. Again, it is one of the highest rated films of this year. That's no BS, no bull. It is, if you look at all the different, and you have a listing on NintendoQuest.com of all the reviews, including our own here at GameSource, as far as that's concerned. All the different entities and outlets that have reviewed your film. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're close to like 30, and then it's just too much for the site to handle to constantly keep posting updates. And for whatever isn't in print, there's audio versions out there floating around with just tons of different people, like a number of different sources and outlets and podcast groups that have talked to Jay and I. So there's no shortage of information to find on the film and what people think about it. So check it out. It's another fun ride. It does divide some people here and there too, so it's kind of interesting that we talk about that as we get into Star Wars, which I think by nature is going to divide people.
That's true. That's true indeed. And I know you and I discussed that a little bit last night as far as it's concerned. It's just, but it is in my opinion, a well-made film. Kudos to you and Jay on all your things that you did this year as far as the Power Tour is concerned, taking it to the streets and to the fans out there and all the theaters all across this country. In fact, abroad, you went to Canada and you showed it off as well in the UK. And you still have plans to show it even more, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we just literally this week today we just announced the Toronto screening is official. It's on Wednesday, January 20th at 8 p.m. at the Royal Theatre. We have a screening on the 17th in Kingston, Ontario. So those two towns are only 2 hours apart. And the Kingston screening, it's all for charity in conjunction with Extra Life. We're not making a penny off it. I think the theater's, waiving the rental fee, I believe. We've almost sold out the small theater, and we're trying to get to the big theater. And we just want to basically give something a little back to the community and everybody out there via Extra Life. And the Toronto screening has just been something that everybody has been asking for. And because of the cost of doing things in Toronto, it was really hard for us to do it without sacrificing 2 or 3 other screenings. So we thought it would be more beneficial to the film to roll it out across those 3 other cities versus the one city in Toronto, especially when we already had our London screening. So in the end, it's all working out, and it's cool to see that there is still a request for Nintendo Quest to be screened theatrically. It's a community film, and that's the way it should be seen. It's the best way to experience it.
Awesome. And one quick question on that, now that seems to be the going thing these days. When the sequel to Nintendo Quest is made and is ready to appear, are you going to be running it in conjunction with the original Nintendo Quest, back to back for that massive marathon showing?
That really depends on the format of the sequel.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
The follow-up projects range in a bunch of different fashions. When you become a Patreon backer, you will hear us discuss that exact question. What form should the sequel take, if there is a sequel, and why should it be that form, and why?
Fair enough, fair enough. Or even a Rob McCallum Film Fest with all your various projects.
You just stop it right now.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Just stop it.
Well, just trying to help you out there as far as get those plugs in. I learned for the best when it comes to advertising one's projects. But
I've created a monster.
This is true. This is true. Just as I have with your streaming capabilities. But be that as it may, the reason why we're here mainly is, like I said, Star Wars: The Force Awakens came out to a huge audience. It met, I think, what most people would say, most financial as far as predictions and what analysts had said that the movie was going to do. Pretty much right around the number. Your thoughts initially when you were sitting down in the theater to watch Star Wars: The Force Awakens?
I can't believe the number of trailers that are preceding this film. I think there was like 8, which was like astronomical. And then it was really strange not to have the 20th Century Fox fanfare lead into the Lucasfilm logo. That was very strange for me. It was just like the Lucasfilm Limited thing came up, and it still hadn't hit me that I'm watching a new Star Wars. And I still feel like I haven't seen a new Star Wars film. And that's not a dig, although you could interpret it that if you really want to nitpick on the language. I guess it really hasn't hit me. I never really bought into the hype because there was so much going on, and I don't watch a lot of TV, so I never saw like any of the TV spots. Going into it, I'd really only seen the trailers and the teasers they released. And that was enough. I'm just too busy to kind of get swayed by all the marketing. So I kind of sat down with medium expectations, I would say.
Fair enough, and I agree with you on that. But you got to remember, obviously, as well, it's a financial decision by running all these trailers beforehand.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Even with so far as Microsoft and Sony with PlayStation and Xbox running Halo 5 and Uncharted videos at selected theaters as well. It's a major financial decision. They want to capture that audience. And it just really just. If that's to warning, if you haven't seen the movie yet and you were watching this as far as spoilers are concerned, and you really want to spoil it for you, we're going to spoil it for you. I mean, that there's a whole lot of trailers before the film, indeed. Yeah, and well, on that note, as far as it's concerned, because I noticed as well, and I have a review that I posted over the weekend on our In Case You Missed It page at yourgamesource.com. I also noted the tremendous amount of callbacks to the film as far as it's concerned. And sometimes, and even though I rated it very strongly overall, I just wanted to say that I think there was a lot of callbacks to the point where it was a little overdone. And your thoughts, Rob, on the fact that maybe it might have been a little bit too much nostalgia thrown in there?
That's hard to say because that's what they've really marketed this as, right? So they've said, we're going back to the original cast, essentially continuing that story that was left 30 years ago. So how much is not enough and how much is too much for the sake of story? There has to be a good dose in there if we're continuing the story. But at what level does it become fan service versus plot purpose? You know what I mean? So it's hard. There were some really nice lines in there, like early on, Max von Sydow's character, speaks of Princess Leia, or General Leia, as now she's called, and he says, "She'll always be royalty to me." That was a nice, succinct line without putting it too much on the nose, and it really confirms that she isn't a princess anymore, which is a little bit of a fanboy debate that I've had with Jay. I said she ceased to become a princess. She was never born into royalty to begin with. The second Alderaan was destroyed, she was no longer royalty, so... It's a harsh approach, but so be it.
I would love to hear that argument.
But technically, I guess, you could look at her as a descendant as the Queen of Naboo as well, even though it's an elected position, and so by that rationale, Luke's a prince.
Fair enough. Yes. When you look at it in that context, yeah, you're right on that. But yes, we now, as far as our viewers on Twitch, we are doing well. Thanks for asking. And then I guess the big plot, as far as is concerned, is Han Solo, my favorite character from the series. He does play a prominent role in the actual movie as well. And to what point does he play, as far as it's concerned? Was he too much in the film for your taste, Rob, or was he in there right amount before his
not enough
untimely demise?
Not enough. And I don't think it has to do with lines or page count. I think it's the way that the story is framed. If I'm going to have any one major knock on The Force Awakens, it's the way in which the story unfolds and the way in which it's presented to us. Episodes 4, 5, and 6, and even 1, 2, and 3 to an extent, are framed from the characters that we know, or at least extend from the 4, 5, and 6 trilogy in the way that Obi-Wan kind of leads the story in the prequels with Anakin. So to start episodes 7, 8, and 9 and basically have it framed from characters we've never met, I think is a huge mistake. I understand why Disney's doing it, for building these characters up and branding and making them important. But as fans know, fans of Star Wars especially love the background characters. They love the minor roles. That's why Boba Fett has gained such popularity, because he's just kind of badass in the background. I thought it would have been a much better decision to introduce Finn and Rey, and even Poe to a lesser degree, as characters that emerge and slowly take the limelight in this new trilogy, rather than being thrust in our face, and then to allow the old guard again to have that kind of crossfade or that opposite gradient where we start with them and the baton is slowly handed off. Can you imagine how great The Force Awakens would have been if we would have basically started on a scene with Han and Chewie in that freighter, and they're basically in that situation where Han is stuck between a rock and a hard place? Yes. How great would it have been? Which is
with some of the stars.
Hear me say over and over again on this podcast.
with some of the stars of one of my favorite movies of this modern era, The Raid Redemption, which I really appreciated them being in the film as well. And shout out right away, real quick, to Bearable 2as119 for following us. I just wanted to appreciate it, and we're actually going to get a few more Twitch followers in here. We appreciate you watching. Again, we are dealing with Star Wars: The Force Awakens spoilers, and a little bit later on, some of our Game of the Year thoughts for Wii U, 3DS, and overall. So we appreciate you joining us here on the Game Source podcast. Like I said, Han Solo is my favorite character, and as much of him on the film, I guess, as possible is always a good thing, because I think he carries the film quite a bit when he's on. His untimely demise was very heart-wrenching for me.
It's a waste. I'm just going to come out and say it's a waste to kill Han at this point. I think that it makes sense in a story world, and I think that there are motivations there for him to die, and die at the hands of Kylo Ren or Ben Solo, depending on your point of view of who that character is. But I think it's a waste to introduce Han at maybe the lowest point of his life and basically be cast away, when there could have been so much more dynamic play between him and Leia, who is also equally kind of at a low point. Nobody believes Leia and the Resistance for what they think the First Order is. They've been cast aside to essentially start the Rebel Alliance again on their own. She's seen as a bit of a warmonger. Nobody trusts her. She looks frail and unsure of any kind of confidence. All she knows is that she had a good time in the past, and she doesn't know what happened to it. So much like the stars of the old trilogy, she feels like she's being replaced by this up-and-coming generation, and she doesn't know how to handle it. So it's just quite a shame that they didn't want to explore more of that dynamic and have, that arc take place between at least Han and Leia. And the fact that Luke and Han will never see each other again is pretty crippling, especially when you hear, Han talk about Luke. And I think probably that shot at the end with Luke while he's in tears is probably because he sensed that Han passed away. I think that's a big part of it, on top of all the other psychological issues that Luke is going through as a nutty old hermit on an island.
And you and I both know, and see, reading interviews over the years, that Han does not really have an affinity for this character.
Harrison Ford has asked that Han died in Jedi.
Yes, he petitioned. Yeah. So, and it's actually not my favorite of all the Harrison Ford characters. For I love Deckard from Blade Runner the most, and Indiana Jones always has a unique charm as well. Which one is your favorite Harrison Ford character?
Indiana Jones by far, but then Han Solo, and between the two, it's a razor thin margin. To be honest, honestly, The Force Awakens lowers Han Solo's appeal to me a little bit, just because of all of the potential of exploring that character that there could have been.
Well, you could see it coming, from his interviews where he was saying the movie's so wonderful and he was appearing so much as far as in interviews and whatnot.
Yeah, it was almost like, this is the last time I'll ever have to do this ever again.
Fair enough. And what were your thoughts on as far as Princess Leia and her
General Leia?
Yeah, General Leia, and her lack of involvement in the movie as a whole.
Again, there could have been tons of involvement. It's the way in which they told the story. They could have framed it completely different. Imagine what the cameras would have been pointing at as the Resistance was alerted to, the BB-8 droid being on this other planet, as they, basically mobilize their X-wings and take off and go after it. And you could have just told the story from her perspective and Han's perspective, and it would have been such a more powerful film. So the fact that they chose to limit Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford's actions is really disappointing to me. At least have one film where these guys are the lead, and they hand it off either halfway through this film or near the end, and then let Episode 8 kind of take its course. It really feels like Disney is taking over from George Lucas.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and read into that allegory and say that's exactly what this feels like. Oh, we have another, whole set of people that want to play in this universe. And that's exactly what this feels like to me. And don't get me wrong, I don't think the film is bad. As a filmmaker and as someone like yourself, you instantly spot all these options for potential, and whether we've considered the domino effect of them or not, it's hard to say, but there's just some that are so glaring. I would say that officially I feel like it feels much more like a TV show than it does a film. And maybe that's because we've been conditioned that way in the last 10 years to kind of view content in a different way. It doesn't feel like a big Star Wars event movie as much as it feels like episode 1 of a series called Star Wars, which is somewhat similar to Game of Thrones in space. That's sort of tied to something that was, made 40 years ago that has sort of been revived now. It just has a different vibe. I think people that are slamming The Force Awakens will have a better appreciation for it when episode 8 comes out, and episode 9 likewise, because that story will expand. And by virtue of there being more of the pieces out there, people will like it more.
Your thoughts on Luke as far as his he was the focus of the actual movie as a whole, and the search from the First Order as far as to find him, between the Resistance and the First Order to find him, but yet he only appears a very small amount in the movie at the end. Okay to save him for future episodes, or would you like to see him utilized more in the film?
Luke Skywalker? I thought he was a myth. How can he be a myth if he's only been missing for like 30 years, if that? 30 years! We can think back to 30 years ago in our life, so why is it so hard for people to do that in a galaxy far, far away? That's a weird kind of situation for me. And maybe for someone like Ray, who might be on the polar opposite end of the galaxy, and, trickles of this guy named Luke Skywalker who helped destroy the Death Star and overthrow the Empire. It feels like myth or legend. And maybe I'm nitpicking too much, but this gets to my other point of the film, where it feels like they wanted more time to pass between the events of Jedi at some times and less at other points to suit other agendas. Honestly, I would have ended the film with the Falcon taking off from wherever the Resistance is and cut to the credits without having them discover Luke. And for them to do essentially Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where the Nazis and Indy are both racing to the Holy Grail because they each have a different portion of the map and the clues to get there. It feels like such a waste now that the map is put together to get there in 5 minutes, when that could have been more of an entire film. The actual race to get to Luke. Versus just an ongoing chase movie where Finn and Rey are trying to get away and they're constantly followed and tracked by the First Order, only to essentially go to where the First Order is, housed. And the Death Star. Oh, wait, that's not a Death Star. Here's a graphic that shows you that this is not a Death Star.
Absolutely. And one again, thanks for everyone who's joining us. Thanks also as well. I want to give a shout out to White Paw 9 for actually hosting on his channel our podcast. We've got a number of viewers now for us. This is the Game Source Podcast, number 138. We're touching on Star Wars The Force Awakens spoilers, and also as well some later on some Game of the Year thoughts. We're here with the director of Nintendo Quest, which you can get available today on Vimeo, Amazon, and iTunes. It's Rob McCallum, along with me, Gerald, better known as Yes, Elvis Lives. Two of the things that I had issues with, although, like I said, overall, on our site at yourgamesource.com, on the In Case You Missed a page, I rated it very strongly. It's a lot of fun. Was the plot deriving from the original Star Wars as far as it's concerned, and being very closely associated to that. I thought it was a little bit too much so as far as it's concerned. I thought it lacked some originality. I wanted it to go off, the movie to go off in a little bit different direction as far as it's concerned in order to get where it needed to go. Your thoughts on that?
It wasn't horrible. I mean, you see it coming from the data that's stored in a droid, to the cantina scene, to the kind of desert orphan who's wanting a better life, to even meeting Han Solo when they do, to escape in the Millennium Falcon. There's a bunch of different things. The only thing that really irks me is the one thing I alluded to on the last topic, is that no, this new weapon isn't a Death Star, because a Death Star only kills one planet. So what would be more dangerous? One that kills 10!
Yes.
Like, it's so ridiculous. Like, what's going to be the next thing? It kills a whole star system. Like,
yes.
There's so many. Yeah, like, it doesn't have to be so, like, I don't know, grand scale for it to be important. Look at Empire. The ending of that film was very personal and very character driven. And if they wanted to do more with Han Solo and Kylo Ren, they could have really built it up to that. I think that would have been a much bigger ending that had less fireworks.
Yeah, I agree on that. And Also, another thing that concerned me was some characters, because of the frantic pace. And J.J. Abrams does like to direct films. The first Star Trek reboot was one of my favorite films of the past 15 years. And one of the things notable about it is how well it moved and how fast it moved. But sometimes you can go so fast that you leave some things out. And one of the things that I had, small issues I had with Star Wars, The Force Awakens, was that it moved too fast for some of the characters. Some of the side ancillary characters, as far as it's concerned, seem to get left by the wayside as far as their development is concerned. Obviously, they're going to be developed in further episodes, but still would have been nice to get to know them a little bit more. Your thoughts on that? Like Captain Phasma, I think, is probably the one that stands out to me the most.
Yeah, but because they've branded her, I know that she's going to be a stronger presence in the future. It's just evident. She obviously feels very slighted by the events too, with her role and all that. And I think she feels personally responsible for Finn's defection. So I think all those seeds are planted there. I just think that J.J. Abrams can make a movie so fast that he uses his speed as a band-aid to cover situations. I remember watching Star Trek Into Darkness, and unlike most people who watched all 6 films, or at least the original trilogy going into this, I watched Abrams stuff to kind of wrap my head around where he might be going with this. Star Trek Into Darkness moves so fast that you at first glance, you don't see all the plot holes until the movie stops and your brain catches up and you start to think about it. And I think that happens with Star Wars here a little bit to its detriment. I think the biggest knock in terms of speed is we don't really get a full understanding of what the landscape is of the galaxy and how things have shifted and why people are in the position that they are in. I just posted on my Facebook, and maybe you can piggyback into the comments later, a big Q&A back and forth about the questions people had about Force Awakens and how the novelization clears some of that up, and how some of the books that are coming out that take place before the Force Awakens and the comic books, fill in some of those gaps. And it's just nice to see it all kind of a little bit neat and tidier. It helps my appreciation for the film, seeing it laid out like that, which makes me wonder why couldn't the film have laid something out a little bit more specifically.
The Slash film article?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. The 25 questions or whatever, that we had about Star Wars.
I'm going to post that on both the Google Hangouts and also as well on our 4 followers watching on Twitch. So we appreciate that. It's going to come up right now for you. So if you want to check that out.
Yeah, and the nice thing about that is it mainly just confirms or denies some of the things, like I said, going by the novelization. And it doesn't delve too much into fan theories, but it does kind of point out some questions people have and tries to speculate based on the evidence that exists, using both the shooting script and other story ideas that have been kind of bantered around in different interviews as well. So that's interesting.
One question that was asked was, where do you think the series goes from here?
To a toy shelf near you. Obviously, it's, where is Luke and what's Luke's role, and will he be the hero that's called to action that denies that? Will he come around? Are we going to be trying to pull Luke out of the mopey swamp, or is he going to understand what's going on? Is he going to be full of revenge because of what Kylo did to Han? Is he going to turn to the dark side?
It looks like he's, hanging out on the islands there.
He needs some therapy. That's all I got to say. Luke's been on the islands for 7 years by himself. He probably felt the tremor in the Force between the 10 planets that exploded and, one of his former best friends. And he probably feels the pain of his sister. There's a lot going on for Luke mentally, and I'm worried about how they're going to kind of showcase what happens. At this point, I really don't care what happens in Episode 8. They haven't left it on enough of a cliffhanger for us to find out. They answered the big question, where is Luke Skywalker? There's really no big questions I have. It's all the little questions like, did I understand that right, which happened in The Force Awakens? I guess the big question is, why does Rey know how to use the Force so quickly? Why does, is she a Skywalker? Will Kylo ever turn since he feels the light side being pulled to him? But it's not like any kind of major plot push, I would say. These are just kind of questions that'll get answered over the entire trilogy rather than just the next one.
Do you think they left enough for viewers to come back in the same amount, a similar amount of as far as the number of people going to the actual movie, or do you think that there's going to be a huge drop off between now and Episode 8?
Typically, sequels drop about 20%, sometimes 25%. So I think you'll see 75% on the return. So if this made, call it 500 million, the next one will probably open to 400 million. And it's all dependent on the story that they want to advertise, though, and the direction they want to take it. You know, I don't think it has anything to do with the backlash online. I think because Star Wars now exists in the internet age where the prequels really didn't, in the same social media sense, people are going to complain about it no matter what. But I think there's an audience there. But because people now know what it is, less of those people will go back to maybe experience it.
Just had a pretty good question come out from Bearable, who has, I think that's T19. He's asking if Finn may be actually a Sith. Now, he's thinking, it said it sounds crazy, but it goes against, you know, the Jedi code and whatnot for him holding the actual lightsaber. Do you think there's something more to as far as Finn's character in that realm?
I mean, the stuff that I've read with JJ and even Kathleen Kennedy have said, you know, the Force surrounds us. It goes above and beyond a bloodline. So you don't have to be a Skywalker to be either. I think any of us in the Star Wars galaxy that want to tap in to the Force, it's the thing that separates you going from Jedi or Sith are the decisions you make and the desires that you have. You know, Anakin was on the fence. You know, Luke felt on the fence at times too, just like they're showcasing Kylo Ren on the fence between the light and the dark half. So I don't think it's as simple as saying that this character is this or this character is that. I think, like for most of us, it's an ongoing battle with, you know, some of the frustrations we deal with in day-to-day life. Sometimes we have to show restraint. Sometimes we give into that and we become a little hot-headed about things. But, you know, it's about how we react and deal to that stuff. So does Finn have the ability to use the Force? I think in a broad scope, I think we all do, you know, or everybody does in the Star Wars galaxy. Will he be a Force user is a little bit more complicated to say.
And he was also stating as far as it's not more about the lightsaber, but more about the love and the hatred as far as the dark and the light. And I know that was used quite a bit in the film as far as those type of metaphors are concerned, especially when the confrontation between the Solos exists.
I think Finn might get pushed over the edge as he learns more about his past. That's obviously something that's been left in the open, and I think that's where Captain Phasma is going to loop back around, since she was kind of in charge of his unit and, you know, was the one that said that he passed all the simulations as he was promoted from sanitation to stormtrooper. So I think that she's going to play a huge role in how Finn develops, and he might go off the edge. And I don't think it has anything to do with the ability to wave a lightsaber around or anything like that. But yeah, I think he could go off the edge easily.
And that's really what he was trying to say, is that it was more about the dark side and the light side, and about the hatred and love than just about, you know, why is he holding a lightsaber is concerned.
Yeah.
But
what do you think about this? This was an interesting thing for me to discover. They set up Rey as essentially the smuggler scavenger, very capable, very tactile, very Han Solo, to the point that Han offers her a position, and then essentially they make her like a Force user and a Jedi. So they have managed to combine Luke and Han into one female presence. Is that a good thing or a bad thing, do you think?
I think it was a necessary thing, because I think they looked at the characters themselves that they had created and realized that she is the only one that is built strongly enough as a character, in my opinion, that can encompass all those ideals, unless they bring someone new in episode 8 that can help her take away from that, as you know, and help her with that as a character. But she was written and played very strongly. My highest compliments to Daisy Ridley on her character, because I think she really did a fantastic job in the movie, and I think she's one of the main reasons why I want to say that Star Wars Force Awakens is a go-see movie and is a lot of fun. Despite what we're saying as far as concerned with our ideals, we want to say that from my end, and I don't want to speak for you, Rob, but it is a fun movie to go see, and it is definitely a great 2 hours and 15 minutes. So
no, Rey's a great character, but I do kind of maybe question meshing together a Han Solo type and a Luke Skywalker type, just because, you know, you don't have to like the main character in Star Wars because there are other great characters that you can like. Like I've always liked Han Solo more than Luke Skywalker, but Luke is equally cool in his own right. You know,
Yes.
just like people will like Luke more, but they'll love Han as well.
Or they'll
So,
like Darth Vader or Boba Fett or what have you.
and right now it feels like they've really boiled it all down to two characters. Essentially, Kylo Ren, because he's the big face of all the packaging and they've really pushed him, and he's the Sith in this one. Not that they're using that name anymore, and they specifically address that in The Force Awakens. There's not called the Sith. That was once a name used to describe those that follow the dark side of the Force, which again is interesting. But you basically have Kylo Ren. Now that the film's over, you also have Rey, and that's the main oppositions that they seem to have set up. That's not to downplay Finn's role, but at this point, they just haven't pushed him as much as they might.
Do you see that as an issue going forward, that they haven't developed or they will not develop all those other characters well enough to?
It's a major issue. I mean, even as much as I want to like Poe, you know, he's great, he's fun, he's energetic, he really lifts every scene that he's in, but he's very two-dimensional. I don't get like a vibe from him one way or another about, you know, his flaws or what his weaknesses are. There's just no development. And he's just very, you know, the same flavor every time we see him. And
Comes in with the rah 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 cheerleader type deal, and then boom, he's gone.
yeah, and Rey, we definitely got a lot of different aspects of who she is, and same with Finn, but they never really pushed Finn's character enough for us to really grab hold. We just know that he doesn't like killing people, or the thought of killing someone really hurts him, which would, in my mind, say that he might not ever drift to the dark side unless he learns more about his past that pushes that revenge aspect. But you know, there's just not enough to go on for Finn to care enough about him yet, despite the complications under the surface.
And one last thing, as far as the concern, before our final thoughts, before we head to the Game of the Year talk, as far as it's concerned, Chewbacca. I know that was brought up as another question, and some great questions on our Twitch channel, and we appreciate it so much as far as you watching today. Yeah, Chewbacca. I thought he, you know, for a time he was well used, but in the end, after Han Solo's death, I understand that the sadness there, but I just thought he was just pushed aside as well as a character. Or your thoughts on Chewbacca as far as it's concerned?
Han dies, they come back to the Resistance, and he's celebrating with everybody. Well, meanwhile, Leia is like holding Rey in arms, and they've never met before. Because Rey wasn't on where the Resistance was, but Leia and Rey seemed to embrace understanding what had just been lost. But Chewie, yeah, did you not realize that Rey and Leia had never met? Yeah, JJ's just moving too fast for people to care. They had never met, yet we get why they're embracing because of the loss of Han. But Chewie's off partying like he doesn't care about Leia all of a sudden. Like, no big deal. It's okay. And the fact that Han had never used his bowcaster before, like, what is that? What is that about? In the 30 years or whatever, he's never picked it up and realized how heavy it was or seen it in enough action.
Or what it can do.
Yeah. Chewie, like the droids, is a sounding board for the main character to kind of get things out and have exposition confirmed, unfortunately, in this. There are some moments where it feels like the mighty Chewbacca, like Jabba proclaims, but it's just few and far between, I think. Again, out with the old and in with the new.
Pretty much, and I don't see a great future in the next episodes. I'm sure he'll be sprinkled in there a little bit as far as the concern with 8 and 9, but I don't know.
You want to know the oddest thing? Like, speaking of things that happen so quickly, 3PO puts his head in frame and says, "You probably didn't recognize me because of my red arm."
Yes.
First of all, super, super clunky. It would have been way cooler to just leave that as a mystery. But at the end shot, as the Falcon takes off to go find Luke, he has the gold arm back. So not only is that line clunky, but it's irrelevant the next time we see him because he's waving at the Falcon with his gold arm.
And I believe the only way you find out exactly how he got the red arm in the first place is by reading the upcoming Star Wars comic. Is that correct?
And because he was hardly in this movie, I really don't care. And that's the other thing, right? The droids have been integral to every single film. They have been the window. And while BB-8 is front and center in this throughout the whole thing, and a great practical prop, a great character, really connected with them. I thought they did a lot with that guy. It was really disheartening to see R2 and 3PO put on a shelf until magically the plot needed R2 to wake up.
That's true. That's true. And It's kind of disappointing to see R2D2's lack of involvement. There was a lot of lack of involvement. It focused around, and obviously that to an
Again,
extent
the
it had
camera
to.
was on the wrong side of the fence for me. It
Yeah,
would have been much cooler to see it on the other side. Like, why does BB-8 not know who R2 is? Obviously, 3PO does, because 3PO is talking to him. BB-8 has been with the Resistance for a while because he's, Poe's droid, but he's never seen R2 because R2 has basically a bedsheet over him like he's already dead. He's in robotic coma. Nobody cares about him. He's on low power mode. Ugh. Until the plot needs him to wake up. Mind you, I think in the next one we'll find out that, Luke triggered him because things had got too far now that Han's dead. So Luke reached out with the Force, and my brain, like a lot of my friends, have written a bunch of things in with Luke being so far away that he's magically the architect behind the scenes,
the puppet master.
Yeah, Luke's connecting the dots for me for everything that doesn't make sense. And as much as, again, we keep saying we have issues with these small little things, definitely go see it. Definitely check it out. And you've probably seen it if you're listening to our spoiler-filled chat. I think it's a really good first step in a series of films that'll come out. It's like the pilot episode of Game of Thrones. I had a ton of questions about what the hell that show was. What is that? What is this place, Westeros, and all these different kingdoms? And, why is this guy basically casting off one of his son and abandoning him? And, he's giving wolves to his other kids and all this stuff. I didn't understand Game of Thrones at all until like the 4th episode when I could get into it. And that's because each episode really built off the last one and really paved and pushed the story and fleshed it out. And I think you're going to see a lot of that with this one. Or they're going to take the Jedi route and basically say, oh, well, this is because this has happened. The way in which, Obi-Wan says, I only lied to you from a certain point of view. We're going to get a lot of that, I think, possibly.
Fair enough. And I hope to get more interviews with some great staff members for GameSource and YourGameSource.com later this week. I'm also want to get their thoughts as far as Game of the Year is concerned as well, which we reviewed many games this year, and a lot of them are contenders for the Game of the Year. But first off, being the man who has directed Nintendo Quest, who showed it to several theaters across the country and actually in Canada and the UK as well this year, wanted to get your thoughts on the best Wii U 3DS games of this year, as we'll be posting soon. For that hopefully everybody out there will get a chance to vote on soon, and we'll be mentioned more on our GameSource Facebook page how to do just that. But it seems to come down to, when you're talking about the few titles that are really up for grabs as far as the best Wii U 3DS game, seems to come down to Super Mario Maker, which you absolutely loved, Splatoon, also as well, Legend of Zelda, Triforce. And then also, even though our reviewers were still working on it quite handily, it did get released earlier this year in Japan, Xenoblade Chronicles X. Your thoughts as far as is concerned on the Wii U 3DS Game of the Year?
Well, not having too much exposure to the 3DS library, it's really hard for me to talk about that stuff. But as far as the Wii U titles, because they're so few and far between compared to their other counterparts at Microsoft and Sony, almost every title they released was great. I think the only disappointing title to the majority of people on the Wii U this year was maybe Kirby's Rainbow Curse.
Yeah.
I think everybody continued to see huge growth in Smash for all the different add-ons that they had with that. I think Mario Kart had a bunch of DLC that continued to delight people. Yoshi's Woolly World got huge props and reviews for an amazing, innovative platformer. It's still on my shelf, unfortunately, so I got to get to that. But for me, it's all about Splatoon and Mario Maker, and I love them equally, but both in different ways. Splatoon is just really fun. It's a nice family-friendly take on, the the deathmatch kind of sensibilities that we all loved, and it takes it in a fun direction that isn't so dark and so grim, and it's innovative and it's harmless, and it's still encouraging to play no matter how much you're getting splatted and painted. You never feel like you're getting destroyed or super camped out like you are in some of the other modern day shooters. And Mario Maker is just a creative blessing for people that want to explore what they feel and their love for that series. You really can't go wrong. Xenoblades is on my radar. I just don't have the time for that. I'm trying to get through all the Tales stuff that has been released on PS4 and PS3 still, and they just the Tales announced another game in their series, I think today or like on Friday. So I got to get up to it, Gerald. I don't have enough time these days.
I know, with all the projects you're doing, and the fact that you also and I appreciate you reviewing Crusader of the Lost Idols, which
Yeah.
is available on our reviews page at yourgamesource.com. We truly
That's a
appreciate you doing
free
that.
to play game too. Yeah.
Yes, but if you had to choose one as far as the best Wii U game you played this year, 3DS Wii U game, that type deal, Nintendo platform game, what would you choose?
It's got to be Mario Maker. It's just overall so well rounded between what you can do on your own and how you can interact with the community that it's just undeniable. Splatoon's fun, but there isn't enough to do on your own. You really require to play with other people to progress and constantly enjoy. And then even the depth of the gameplay could be criticized after a while. I know they keep unrolling new weapons and they keep, new fashion and outfits and different quirks and maps for Splatoon. But Mario Maker seems to be this infinite well of joy both on the design side and on the play side. It's really remarkable, and it's a constant source of discussion for me and a few people online. And it's always amazing to see what people have created in their levels, and just be an observer, whether you're playing or creating. It's fun to sit back and take that third role and just watch people enjoy and create as well.
And last but not, well, actually not last but not least, but if overall for the game of the year for you, there's going to be a lot of choices for people to vote on out there, in no discernible order. The Witcher 3, Rocket League, Rise of the Tomb Raider, Until Dawn, Metal Gear Solid 5, Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner 2, Record Breaker, Undertale, Fallout 4.
I'm waiting for you to name a game I've played.
So
I haven't played any of those games.
Oh my goodness, indeed. There's some great candidates.
I've played more games on the most disappointing game of 2015 years list than I have on the ones that you're nominating for possible game of the year.
But what was the best game that you played this year? And Super Mario Maker, obviously, as well. And
honestly, I can tell you the game I've put the most hours into, and that would be Evolve, which is probably surprising for a lot of people. But again, you got to put yourself in my shoes. It's a game that I can pick up and put down and play 10 minutes at a time. And I love the constant hunt for the monster. I love that I can play with bots. I love that there's customization. I love the degree of challenge. I went for the season pass on it, which I never thought I'd do for a game. I like the DLC. I like the different modes that they've included. For me, I knew there was a lot of hype getting into it, and I'd love to see them take on licenses. So, it's like a Ghostbusters kind of skin over everything, or it's a Jurassic Park skin. But as the game exists, it works pretty well for me to pick up and put down and get past the faults. There's a nice degree of challenge with an in-and-out gameplay that really suits my lifestyle at the moment. So it's a casual, modern game that I can get into.
Sort of like me with Battlefront. I never, I know it's also will be on our most disappointing list because it is a disappointment to a lot of people. But for me, it is one of those, like you said, just pick it up, I play it, and then I move on. I don't take anything out of it. I just I want to recreate, play. I love playing Walker Assault because I just love in that type of environment and recreating that environment. And then I just play for a half hour, 45 minutes, boom, I'm done, move on. And it doesn't really mean that much to me in depth or anything like that. And I can certainly see why a lot of people still have issues with that game entirely. But for me, it's a fun little jaunt every now and then, and there you go. Bigger games such as The Witcher 3 that I delved into, and Fallout 4, which I know a lot of our staff members have delved into as well. I know those will be big topics. Metal Gear Solid 5, I know that one's also going to be a key on the list as well. Just really great games. Rise of the Tomb Raider, which I know everybody who has Xbox One should try. It's definitely I know it did not sell as well as Microsoft and Square Enix want you to believe it did, but it did not. But it should not be forgotten as a great title this year as well. So a lot of great choices out there.
Yeah, speaking of those choices, I know you said you're going to include a poll for maybe the most disappointing game. Are you going to include a poll for the most anticipated game of 2016?
That is actually, yes, already up, and it's available on the page.
Where's that page?
Well, that's going to be it's on Facebook already, and if you go to the best video games of 2016, which I'm going to give you access to, I got to do that today, so you can post all the wonderful things going on there as well. The best video games of 2016, that poll is already up. The best video games of 2016 on Facebook. If you want to go ahead and go on there and vote, you can start voting on the most anticipated game of 2016. So that's already available. I'm hoping to get together with I've been talking back and forth with our friends from Retro City Games, and also as well with you, Rob, as far as it's concerned about those who like that page. As far as it's concerned, maybe possibly running a contest. I've offered, as far as my end, it's whatever we need to do to get this done. So I'm going to talk to more Retro City Games. Hopefully, I'll solidify that, and maybe hopefully as early as today, I'm going to stop by there and see what those two have to do. Doug and Nicole are great people. I know they're working with you on the upcoming box art, the documentary, and hopefully get that squared away as well. I know there's eager anticipation over a lot of people voting on the Game of the Year Awards from both our staff and fan bases. So definitely get this started this week. But obviously the talk was Star Wars, and but from our fan reaction out there that jumped up so high when we were talking about Star Wars and decided to check us out still. We appreciate it. Any last thoughts on well, actually a prediction from you for 2016, since we're on the most anticipated talk, the one gaming thing that you think you're going to see as far as it's concerned in 2016, that fans should take in?
The announcement of the NX not being what people expect it to be.
Ooh. And what do you think they expect it to be?
A successor to the Wii U, and I think it'll be more of a companion piece, or at least another device that works in tandem with it and the 3DS. I think it'll be like there'll be some overlap between what the NX does and the phase out of those consoles, but I don't think those consoles are going to phase out for the Wii U. I don't think will phase out for another 2 years minimum.
Fair enough. Do you think that new proposed controller that Nintendo patented earlier this month might have quite a bit to do with it?
It's hard to say. I mean, it looks gimmicky from the patent shots that I saw, the way that there's actually no buttons to press, that they're touchscreen stuff. I could never get into the cell games where the joystick was actually just part of the screen. Again, give me something tactile, give me something physical, not something that's sort of there. I want to have definite control over buttons and stuff. So I'm concerned about that. But I have equal concerns about PlayStation's plans for VR and what they hope to do with that and how quickly that might bust or bank.
Because at PlayStation, it is on both ends of the spectrum. It's either going to hit or it's going to crash.
There will be no middle ground. It'll either be a huge success or it'll be a painful death.
Exactly. Indeed. So that's going to do it for us for today. Stay tuned later this week. I will have hopefully Jay Glenn from GamerCast. I'm hoping also as well to get Josh, Sam, and some other great people on the podcast to share their thoughts on Star Wars and also the Game of the Year as well. So for Rob McCallum, one more last time while we have some viewers left. One last time on how they can actually get a hold of the best documentary this year and one of the highest rated films. And I'm not just saying that to be saying that. I'm just saying it's because it's true. It's backed up when writing one of the highest rated films of this year, Nintendo Quest.
Easiest place is NintendoQuest.com. I think it's even on my lower third there.
Fair enough. Yes, it is.
There you go, NintendoQuest.com. Everything you need to know, the Power Tour web series, the film, in whatever format and whatever site you like, you can get to it there.
Fair enough indeed. So for Rob McCallum, director of the Nintendo Quest, this is Gerald, better known as Yes Elvis Lives. Check us out, yourgamesource.com, at GameSource on Twitter, GameSource on Facebook, and we really appreciate you watching, you just enjoying part of the podcast and listening to all the wonderful Star Wars spoilers. It's another beautiful holiday in paradise, and you have yourself a great day.